Hello and welcome to In Touch with LODs. My name is Beth Megill. I am a language of dance master practitioner and teacher trainer, and I am here today with Rachel Wurman, who is a longtime LOD teacher and recently completed her master practitioner certification and just is an amazing dance educator, specifically working with elementary curriculum. We're going to talk about today how LOD has helped her organize her elementary curriculum and bring it to life and make it practical, considering the time constraints and all of the challenges that we face and accountability probably and some sort of assessment. Like there's got to be stuff. I can't wait to just pick your brain, Rachel. So Rachel graduated from Syracuse University, and went to graduate school at NYU, and then has worked with the New York City Department of Education closely in curriculum development. And what I find so fascinating is that your professional career, Rachel, started really in the jazz, musical theater, like commercial dance realm, and you had your career doing the stuff, dancing the dances, like making it happen. And then you transitioned into education. And I would love to hear a little bit about that transition or what you experienced, doing the work with SAG and how that mentality, of being in the professional world, getting the job, getting like, how do those skills then translate, I'm curious, into, this kind of sometimes perceived as feely, touchy LOD stuff, right? Like, so, because I think that you can come into the world and through all these different doors, and I would love to hear a little more about how you came into the world of language of dance.
Well, thanks, Beth. Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's funny. I think as you get older and you forget your own path and you forget how you got someplace. So it's funny when, you look at your own resume or someone reminds you of things and you go, oh, right, I did that. But I did. I was a performer for a few years. I got very lucky because I lived in a small, big town or a big, small town. And there were a lot of casting opportunities through Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, Ohio. I think a few of the big, like Procter and Gamble and some of those big companies were out there, and a lot of advertising was happening in Chicago. So the Chicago, Ohio, Pennsylvania thing really allowed for a lot of performance opportunities. So I hit the ground running when I graduated from undergrad, and I was performing, and I was in a lot of local theaters and did commercials and got into a few movies and just all local things. And really loved, I always loved performing, really loved performing, and was ready to go to the big city. And so I did. And this is a true story. I actually got to New York. I moved to New York the summer before 9/11. And that becomes a very important timeline. If you were in the city for 9/11, a lot of the movie shoots, film shoots, even the commercial market stopped for quite a while. And then when it picked up, a lot of the agents and things would say, oh, we're just trying to get work for our old people. We're not really taking on new people. So it was just very unfortunate timing and a very, very sad time in New York. And I, at that point, really started getting frustrated with going for auditions and going for casting calls and just never knowing when that next job was going to be. And that was when I decided that I needed a different day job than working in a restaurant, and started to look through the want ads, because want ads were actual real things back then in a newspaper. And I think I got to like the letter D, and it was a dance studio that was looking for a dance teacher. And I thought, oh, that would be a great part-time gig instead of the restaurants while New York settles down, and I can use some of my training and things for that purpose. And the first studio that I called was looking for a ballet teacher. And I said, oh, nope, that's not me. Thank you very much. And I said, this is still a good idea. And so then I went to the phone book, because that was another thing that used to exist. I went to the phone book and I looked up dance studios. And I think it was really the second phone call that I made was looking for a dance teacher to work with kids, a dance teacher who taught jazz and tap. And I thought, oh, this is great. And they hired me. And I started teaching there and everything was going really well. And there was another woman who was teaching at that studio who was at Columbia, I believe, getting her dance education graduate degree. And as soon as I heard that and heard what she was doing, I just think I knew that was for me. I knew I would have loved to have kept performing, but that wear and tear on my emotional psyche was not for me anymore. And I really loved developing my dance classes, and I really loved working with kids. And I thought, oh, this is a career. I can do this. And as luck would have it, there, Columbia was shutting down its dance education graduate program or putting it on hiatus. But a lot of the people who were interested in that program were applying for NYU. And so I just went, oh, okay, let's make a right turn. And I applied for NYU and I got in, and it's sort of like the rest of is history. It was a really important program then and now, and great training and great preparation for going into the schools and doing really whatever you wanted to do with it. For K through 12, I think at the time it was absolutely the best training. And 2 years later, I had my pick of New York City schools to go into. That was also a really great time where dance in the schools was starting to pick up, and a lot of the principals and administrators wanted people, and there wasn't that many of us that were licensed. There wasn't that many of us that were licensed yet.
Yeah.
Even though dance had been in the schools in New York for a very long time, there was only a small population of people. And at that point, even in my program, there were 6 of us that were coming out certified. So even it was a small number. Even if it was only like 6 a year, it was only a small number being produced. Now the numbers are huge. From what I understand, that's something like 40 to 60 new dance teachers every year, because it's coming from multiple programs throughout the city, not just NYU. So yeah, and through NYU, I discovered LOD. Also another kind of accident. The summer before my fall semester was supposed to start, I had gotten the message that there was this summer program at the 92nd Street Y called Language of Dance Center, and that it was going to be required. Now, I don't remember where that message came through, but I'm a very, very conscientious student. And I was like, okay, I got to get ready. I got to do this. And so I signed up for the class, and it was clearly not required because not everybody was there. It was a few of the second year students at NYU in my program, which was great because it also helped me make some friendships and stuff coming in as a kid from Pittsburgh coming into New York and not really knowing anyone. That was a nice way to get a little leg up on some relationships within the program and learn about this whole system that was totally foreign to me. I grew up as a studio dancer, and none of really true lesson planning or deeper curricular ties or dance literacy or assessment or any of those really magic buzzwords were in my growing up dance studio training. And I do think that I was trained by incredible dance teachers, but that just wasn't a thing back then. I'm not sure, but it was missing. And I took to LOD right away. I think you used the word organization before about my elementary curriculum planning. I am an organization person. So when there's a system and when it's logical and it builds on itself. And, there's a little bit of that nerd quality that it can bring out in you, but also inspire creativity that you wouldn't have thought of, or that isn't in your body or in your movement patterns naturally. I loved it, and I stuck with it, and that was 2003. Yeah, it's a long time ago.
So it's so funny, the ways we encounter language of dance and all the different pathways. And I think I was talking in the last interview, I spoke with Corazon Tierra, and she talked about a similar path later, a little bit later in the New York system of encountering LMA first, and then encountering the dance education laboratory, and then through the dance education encountering LOD. In the West Coast, it's like complete, it is the Wild West out here still in terms of education, dance education. I happened to have a opportunity to take lob on notation in graduate school, and then on a whim, my teacher was like, "Oh, they're offering this language of dance course. You should take it." And I'm like, "Yes, because you're so smart and you tell me what to do, I'm going to take it," right? Like I want to be as smart as you. And so I ended up signing up for this course, and now, decades later, my how much of my professional world has centered around this work, which was kind of an accident. Or, I mean, it was just so interesting how it wasn't by design that I set out and like, I'm going to be a language of dance practitioner and I'm going to revolutionize it. Like, it just was, it's like following the breadcrumbs of this work, and then you hit on something, and then it's like you slip on ice and you're into it. And I think because it makes sense for people in different ways. Like you're talking about all of this beautiful organizational, logical, mathematical appeal that it has. And I love that too. Like talk about the super nerd out. I go there. And I love that I can like divide it again, and then can I differentiate again and again and again, and how tiny can I get in my differentiation and learning about these movement concepts, and so that really is very satisfying to me. And then others come at it and are like, "Oh, the openness," and I love that too, right? So then it's like it's so fascinating that this one system is able to attract both perspectives.
So there's a funny story about my time at NYU. NYU is and was a modern-based program. And so as a musical theater dancer, as a jazz and tap person at the time, it's a long time ago, they didn't have a lot of that other happening. There was Pat Cohen and her incredible jazz class that she's so famous for, but it was one class. At the time, I don't think there were any tap teachers there, or any tap classes available to us if we were in the dance graduate program. And it was very important to the directors of the program at the time for me to immerse myself in modern. So much so that when we got to do sort of a concert thesis piece upon our graduation, a concert just of our own work. And I really wanted to go back to my musical theater roots. And it was a huge struggle for me to even call upon some of the choreography that was in me, because I had studied now intensely modern for 2 years, and the openness and the creativity thing. But we had an audition. We always had to audition for the concerts, and all the auditions were always modern based. And there was a really amazing dance teacher colleague of mine that was coming up in the program, and she was going to do a more jazz, I don't even want to say hip hop, but a more jazz inspired modern with a little bit of hip hop roots in her choreography. And so when it was time to audition for her piece, she switched it up. And instead of us having to do all of this improvisation and very open modern, feel the wind and be the wind and whatever with the wind, she put on she put on some like 90s R&B track and asked us to start dancing. And I remember after the audition, she made a beeline for me and she said, wow, your whole body changed. Like your whole face changed, your whole personality changed, everything changed when that came on and you like came alive. And the joke was, well, right, because that's what I used to do. And it was a bit of a battle trying to navigate between those two worlds at that time. The point of my story is that it's one of the reasons why I love LOD. I am not a good open improv, very unstructured dance person. I don't know what to do. You need to give me a direction. I know that we're moving away from product and it should be about process. And my whole curriculum is about process, but me as a dancer, me as a personality, me as a human, I can't perform that way. I am a musical theater performer. You tell me what you want me to do and I will do that for you.
And you're not, I mean, such a common experience. And I think there's so many dancers who would say the same thing about their dance preferences, right? It's a preference. It's like, I prefer to have direction. Is that such a bad thing? Does that make me evil that I prefer direction? And so, so tell me how does LOD, yeah, support that?
Because LOD can be broad for the people who want that and can be very specific for the people that want that. The layers of it allow me to read into it and say, oh, this is the direction that they want, no pun intended, this is the direction that they want me to take, or they want me to use these concept families, or whatever, that it just, whoever is the teacher at the time, that's enough structure for me to feel comfortable and then for me to go create. And then the other benefit of LOD is that it's not style or genre specific or technique specific. So I can totally do something that might even be stemming from a modern conceptual framework, or a ballet conceptual framework, but I can take it and use it in what I want to do. And that's usually jazz. So, yeah, I found that to be very comforting, and obviously so, because like you, I stuck around for all these years. That to me is better for my personality than when I just go into those open, oh, everyone, let's take a walk around the room and everyone start, moving. Move how? What do you want me to do? We're all moving. Say something specific. So I think that I like the specificity of language of dance vocabulary.
Yes.
And how that can be open to anybody's interpretation.
Yes, and that reminds me. So, as part of the LODC organization, my cohort with Teresa Hyland and Michael Richter and Susan Jean Grasso, we talked a lot about, and Tina Curran, we talked a lot about the values, right, of embedded in the work. And one of them is diversity and application. So we can share our concept, and you can interpret flexion as isolation of a little body part in a stylistic way. And I can interpret it as a whole body flexion in a Bartenieff style, fundamentals pattern, and so, or a Peggy Hackney pattern for total body connectivity. And I can use it as a core distal, or I can use it as little isolation, and everybody is still invited to the table of play. And hopefully beyond, and now I think what you experienced before with that, and I did too in my time of jazz being the outlier, now jazz still has its work cut out for it, as in academia, but now we're seeing the breaking from the concert dance format into more inclusive programs, and then how do we then all share a language, right? How are we all going to still share a language to talk about our work in a way that's effective, so I can talk to different genres and styles and backgrounds, and yet we can still have some commonalities. And so I think that that's a beautiful, beautiful point.
Yeah, it's also a really important movement happening in the K through 12 setting, the culturally responsive pedagogy, and how are you being purposeful in your language to make sure that you're not excluding anyone in the room, any of the kids. And Corazon and I were actually talking about this, I'm going to say a month or so ago, with Susan Gingrasso, about how LOD might be a really great tool for that, and a really great key that's missing to connect some things, because you are, with culturally responsive pedagogy, you are really supposed to stay away from some of those ballet terms. You're supposed to stay away from that proper, old school proper verbiage for a movement. And rightly so. It doesn't have to be called a plie all the time, right? That doesn't speak to everybody. That speaks to something very specific in ballet. Mm-hmm. So we were talking about how, LOD might be a really great tool for schools to start using, because it's language for everybody. It's not plie, it's flexion. Flex.
Yeah.
That's just a verb.
Right. I mean, if I can just go off on the plie for just a moment, because, I've spent plenty of hours trying to figure out how the heck do I want to write plie in my motif notation. And of course, the answer is there's not just one way.
Right.
Because what's your intention? It can be flexion of the legs. Absolutely. I think that would probably be one of the more common, like, mechanical descriptors. But in a different setting, I might want to describe it as a lowering of my center of gravity.
I knew you were going to say that, Beth.
Right. I might want to lower my center of gravity, or I might dynamically want to sense weight. Right. Yeah. So now it's like, oh, okay, what am I, what is the goal? And it's been really fun working with some international students with LOD, because I get to ask them, what is the most important moment for you in that dance? Right. And they're like, well, it's all about this rotation of the body. Okay, well then it's rotation of the body. I see this other stuff. I see through my Western lens and my personal history of dance and movement analysis and all of that, whatever lives in me, I see X, Y, and Z, but you're telling me A, B, and C is the most important, then we write A, B, and C.
No, that's another really fun part about LOD too. And I have had the honor of being asked to teach some master classes and some workshops for different universities or different organizations. And I love teaching LOD to grownups also, because obviously the way that they can process the material is so different from the way that my little kids can process it. But also those awesome moments when a new LOD student comes up to you and says, well, but I'm doing this, but I'm also doing this. And how do I write all these things at one time? And you get to say to them, you get to pick what's the most important. What do you want the audience, or what do you want the reader to know was so important to you? And some people get frustrated by that. Some people want to learn all of it at one time. I have to know all of it. What do you mean I don't know all of it? How do I write it if I don't know all of it? But there's most like 90% of people go, oh, and they love that moment of like, oh, I get to decide what's important. It's very empowering for them to, oh, right, it's my choreography and I get to decide how this is going to go down on paper and how this is going to be shared with someone else. And that's so fun. It's fun for the teacher and it's fun for the participant. And it, again, I think it goes back to that welcoming. It's welcoming of you and what's your idea and what do you bring to the table or what do you bring to the dance?
Yeah. Yeah, the personalization of it. I love that. Sometimes I'll, in terms of deciding what to write on the page when you're documenting a dance, one of the tools I use is what would be the cue word you would give your dancer?
Oh, that's a good tip.
Like, right? So, arm, right? Everybody knows the arm bit, right? Then you do the arm. Like, then probably the arm is important to write down, or like, go down, lower the, like, you
Right.
might be turning as you go down. You might be doing other things as you go down. But like, if that's the cue you would give, chances are that's an indicator. Now, it's not always the indicator, but it's at least an inroad to picking one thing.
Right. Or your dancers are having trouble getting that phrase or getting that section. And that's the thing you're shouting at them because that's what they're struggling. And so maybe if you notated it and they could see it, they could read it, they could process it differently. It's just another tool for them to succeed.
Yep, yep. Oh,
Yeah.
so good. So you have a curriculum
Yes.
that is, you identify it as LOD based.
Yeah.
So tell us what that means for you to have an LOD based curriculum, and remind us the age range that you work with.
Sure. So I'm certified K through 12. So I have worked with all ages, which is pretty rare. I've taught elementary, middle, and high school in New York City. My career has been very roller coastery, but the longest time I've spent is in elementary. And just to touch upon high school for a moment, the things that I loved pulling into I was at a performing arts high school in the city, and that curriculum was very preset, predetermined, and I was the third dance teacher coming in, so I didn't have a lot of say in content, or I should say in curricular scaffolding. I didn't have a lot of say in that. I did have say in my musical theater classes, in my jazz and tap curriculum, but in the trajectory, not so much. But I loved bringing in motif notation and LOD into that work because I focused on the kids' musicality, understanding of musicality, dynamics, and of course, just the basic tools of motif notation and writing and how does that help you? How does that help you become the best artist you can be? Just because you're talented already, you've already auditioned and gotten into this very prestigious program. Now, what can I offer you? I can offer you how to really tune what you're doing to the music, fine tune your reaction, your dynamics, your presence, your whatever. So I really love that. And my kids loved it too. They really did. They liked the challenge of it. So that was really fun then. But the elementary school, when you come out of a graduate program, or at least when I came out, you came out with one unit and a handful of lessons. And that was not enough to build a program. You had to then get to work and start creating. And for me, being the Virgo organization person that I am, I opened a notebook and I thought, well, what would you need to learn first? And again, for me, it made sense to think of it using LOD vocabulary. Okay, so I could really build a curriculum on anything I want, and I can invent a unit about anything I want. And that's way too much freedom for me. I need structure.
Yeah.
So what do I know that has structure? LOD has structure. Okay, so what if I was a little kid and I was first taking a dance class? What do I need to understand? All right, well, I need to understand action and stillness, and I need to probably understand levels. Okay, and so I wrote kindergarten, action, stillness, levels. Okay, so now if my first graders learn that in kindergarten, what would I add in? What would make sense after that? Travel, gesture, maybe shape. Actually, we did shape in kindergarten, but like when you're first walking through things and you sketch it out that way. Okay, now second grade. So they learned all of that. Hopefully they mastered it. Now what would come? Oh, well, let's get more specific in travel and let's do the specific pathways. Oh, let's get more specific in levels, and let's add in the directions. Ooh, let's get more specific, right? And we start layering in some deeper family concepts. And I did that for K through 5th grade for my first school, and it worked. So, if it works, do it, right? And that's not to say that it was only, I think this is a common misconception too, that people think I just teach these symbols. No. I created a unit around that. I created a social studies unit around our neighborhood and understanding geography and where is our place in the world with levels. And my first graders create these little cute partner dances, and it's their first partner choreography on their own, and they come up with the ideas on their own after we've researched about New York City and where we live and geography and how the world is broken up into spaces, and then our neighborhood and how it's broken up into spaces. And that's a social studies themed unit. So that ties into some curricular things that they're doing. And then in first grade also, let's stick with first grade. We've got a weather unit where we learn about the clouds. And wouldn't you know that the clouds also exist in 3 levels up in the sky?
Go figure.
Come on, right?
Who designed this?
The universe and Anne Hutchinson Guest.
Yeah, I mean, 3 is the magic number. So
yeah. Well, and Anne Hutchinson Guest being the genius that she is, the way that she took the specificity of notation and made it into that movement alphabet so that there could be a nice, easy entry point for whoever, for whatever age. It helps. And so literally, I probably still have that notebook somewhere in a basement storage bin of that K1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and what I thought built upon itself. And it's changed a bunch. It's changed a lot. The school that I'm in now, for pre-COVID, I really taught the whole school, and I was on a semester schedule. It's an elementary school that's really built around a college like semester system because our school was so big. And it was very important to my administrators that all of the kids that could fit into my schedule would get to experience dance. And so I had to make very serious curricular decisions and cut everything in half and decide what I could fit in and what I couldn't fit in. And now I'm faced with this whole other reality of post-COVID, when we all got back to school and full dance classes were happening in the dance studio, full, less space restrictions, no pod learning. If you followed what was happening in New York City over the past couple of years, I don't want to say learning loss because that's a made up term, but the things that my kids didn't learn in the last 2 years, in the last year and a half, that would have made my units make sense.
Right.
Went out the window. So
for all of us, right? I mean, that's what we're all like, okay, let's reconfigure. What's next? Let's just keep going with what's next. Yeah.
Right. So I had a really great administrator at my school who, recognized that everyone was so focused on academics and what were the academic teachers going to do. And they were going to go back. Okay, so if this was 2nd grade, we're going to go back to the end of 1st grade and do some of that unit work with the kids and catch them up a bit, and then get them rolling into the 2nd grade stuff. And there wasn't anybody helping the arts teachers or helping the dance teachers or helping anybody who was an outside of the classroom teacher figure that out for themselves. It was like, much in the same way that when you graduated grad school, it's like, okay, now go create all of your units all at one time. So I had this really great conversation with one of my admins about, in order for me to do this unit, they would have had to learn these things, and I'm just not sure where to start. And so she said, okay, so look at your year prior and narrow it down. What are the top 5? What are the top 3 dance concepts you would need them to know before they go on? and then do a unit with them that touches upon those 3 or 5 concepts. And that was all I needed, right? I just needed some structure, and she gave me the structure. And I then went back and looked at, obviously, oh, here's the units from kindergarten, or here's the units from first grade, or second grade. And I say that specifically because my schedule also changed, and I wasn't seeing the whole school. I was seeing really the early childhood grades. Yeah. So I also only had to focus on this many as opposed to this many. But I was able to take here's the concepts, and I created a new little mini unit project, yes, with LOD, and got the kids being social with each other again. At the beginning of the year, we still were supposed to keep 6 feet apart. We were still supposed to limit group work. There's all these other elements that were layered in that eventually lightened up as well. So there was all of that to think about too. And LOD allowed me that I could give the kids assignments, and it didn't have to be, create a dance in a group. I had a lot of freedom and other opportunities and other options available to me to create these new units. I think, again, because LOD had so many, just so much wiggle room.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in because I think that idea of the flexibility of the work. So flexibility of you can work the concept of traveling by yourself. You can work the concept of traveling with a partner, keeping distance. You can work the concept of traveling, coming toward in near space and far away. And so I'm going to say it supersedes all these other restrictions that could have deteriorated a plan, right? A lesson plan. Yeah, I experienced something, similar with my students, where we haven't done as much contact and relationship work right now because we're still trying to keep everybody safe and performance ready and, limit contact and interactions. But we were able, I still had this plethora of content available to me. Okay, well, we'll just shift our focus, and we're going to focus on dynamics, which you can do in your own body, in your own space, and across the room from somebody, and feel great and feel like it's still a full, rich experience. And should we then be able to be in each other's near space or in proximity or in contact, right? You can also explore dynamics there. Like, there's nothing restrictive about that content. And we get to lift the content and place it in any context really easily, and see what happens there. And then I think the exploratory nature of it allows us to let go of the outcome and how the learning, what the evidence of learning is, can take lots of different forms. And so that's lovely too. While if we're only accustomed to producing a show, right, or producing the end of the year assembly dance or whatever it is, that everything goes toward that, then once that goes away, what's left?
Well, and so I did have some grades that was the case. So second grade usually does do a show. Third grade does a show, but it was pushed back because for all of the reasons. And so I had some of that too. It was like, okay, this grade would have jumped in and started working on their pieces for the show, but now they're not. So now what do we do with them? And this is a part of a curriculum that I kind of need to come up with right now, because in the old days when I was at my first elementary school, I already, phased out that unit, and we were working on different things, and there was a different order to things. And I had to, okay, well, what does it make sense for me to do with them in the time that I have now before we do get back to that regular curriculum? And that was with a lot of the grades. And now it's April, and we're coming up on the end of things, which is really just a whole other feeling and emotional.
Right?
Yes, because it's really been a really tough year for K-12 teachers, especially I think K-12 arts teachers. It's been a lot. But the now, because of these changes to my schedule, and now I'm not seeing my kids on a semester basis. This is the first year where a lot of my classes are a whole year. I now have the point where, okay, not only did I give you that new unit that I created from my LOD work and concepts that I wanted you to know from last year, not only did I give you that, but I gave you all of the units that I wanted you to have for regular learning at grade level, dance curriculum, at my dance curriculum. And now we have time. So now it's time for new units. So I have some decisions to make. I won't know what my schedule is next year. I won't know if I'm going to go back to semesters or if this is going to be the new reality and it's going to be years. So again, I've got to open up a notebook and I've got to say, okay, well, now if it's a full year, what do I want my kids to learn in this grade, before this grade, before this grade, before this grade? And how do I want to layer that? And I will once again go back to my LOD family because it will help me. And I can then, oh, you know what? I've never had a unit about visual art. So, okay, let's do something with visual art, but with rotation, or let's do something with whatever, right? I can marry any idea that I want to curricularly, academically, curricularly, and LOD curricularly, and make my kids really smart dancers. And this was something else that came up with my chat with Corazon, because I mean, gosh, it didn't take long for my kids to catch up at all. My kids, yes, the first 2 months, month and a half, it was weird. It was dicey. Kids didn't know how to be in school. They didn't know how to be around each other. They didn't know even just, oh gosh, I mean, I teach elementary.
College students are still trying to figure it out because it's.
I mean, we had elementary kids, they didn't know their name. I know that sounds ridiculous, but because they were in a house with their family, right? They never learned their full name. It sounds silly, but it's true. I had kindergartners who come in who didn't know their name. You kind of need to know your name. Like, it's a basic thing, right? So you have to start there before you're worried about, can you skip around the room in this dance class? Can we? But we caught up. Everybody caught up. And then the beautiful part of when we got into my solid curriculum and the kids were working on their projects, the conversations and dialogue that my kids have with each other. I know every dance teacher probably thinks their kids are the best kids, but the conversations they have are so rich and so smart because they have this vocabulary. The way that they put together a movement phrase and the way that they check each other. Oh, we didn't do anything middle level. We need to go back, right? Or we didn't do anything. We forgot that pathway, or we didn't hold our shape strong, or we lost our balance. Like the things that they say, and they're little kids, and they get it. They get that physically they did it wrong, right? Which, as a dance teacher, you want them to know in their body.
The awareness, right? Their sensory proprioception of dance. Yep.
And then even just, this was the assignment. This is what I was supposed to put in my assignment. And then this is what I was supposed to do with my group. And then, we forgot that. And they can check it themselves. Sometimes some classes need more, the actual written checklist of what should be in their project. But sometimes they run through it in their head. Like, think about physically what you just did. Oh, we skipped that part. We were supposed to turn. Ms. Wurman, can we do it again? We skipped the turn. Yes, please go do it again. Yep. Please go start over.
Yes. I mean, but it wasn't just, can we do it again? We messed up. Right? There's a big difference between, I messed up, and versus, I just forgot a turn, or I forgot a rotation, or the roll, or whatever it is. The being able to label it, identify it, see it for what it is, and identify that was the hiccup. right? It wasn't that I just messed up globally, universally, right? I think that that sort of discernment is is so beautiful
Yeah.
in and I think the way that I'm hearing your student, you describe your students talking, is that it's less accusatory toward themselves, like I messed up, we messed up, right? Instead, it's, oh, this component was missing. I'm not a bad person because I messed up. This component was missing, and I just need to make sure to get that component,
Mhm.
right? So it I hear that really. It's subtle, but I think it's a really powerful distinction when we're trying to cultivate movers and dancers that have self-acceptance with their backgrounds and their varying levels of experience and exposure and home lives and cultural practices and all of the different influences that's part of them, um, that we are providing opportunities for them to experience the dance without having it be a test of them,
Mhm.
right? It becomes more about this I don't want to make it sound that dance is separate, but that but that the experience of dancing, that they are in the dance, but they don't have to, the dance, whether it's good or bad, doesn't have to reflect on them, right? Because it has
Yeah.
its own identity. The dance has its identity, um, because it's so vulnerable choreographically.
Yes.
And if we don't cultivate it early, a pattern of practicing it and not getting attached to the outcome and not necessarily getting attaching ourselves and our identity to whatever happened on the dance floor, um, then you get to my college students who are having panic attacks because they
Yes.
have to choreograph a little 1 minute jazz solo, right? Because it's so embedded with their identity that the dance is them, and if the dance is bad, they are bad.
Yes. So I hear that from my middle school colleagues that that's a big struggle for them, that the kids being remote slash wearing a mask has given middle school kids who are obviously at the most emotional point in their life uh, a, a curtain to hide behind. And they are very much struggling with having to get up and perform in front of, oh, now we're back in school and now we dance. And so my hope is that the elementary school programs can, like how my kids really caught up so fast, socially, emotionally, physically, embodying how do we work in school, how do we move around a dance room in school. um, my kids caught up so fast that hopefully in the next few years, the kids that feed into those middle school programs will be more comfortable again. Unfortunately, I'm sure this will be a problem with this COVID generation, that middle school generation, they're going to be uncomfortable. They're probably going to be uncomfortable in high school. It's,
We're
I'm
gonna
not sure that, yeah, I'm not sure we can go back and fix all of that for all of them. But back to your other point, there's probably ways around it. It doesn't have to be for you. For colleges might be different. They don't have to do a solo, right? Maybe it's not, maybe you throw out the solo work and they are working in groups and it's a little less vulnerable. Or maybe they're not performing in the studio. Maybe you invite them to go film themselves. There's a
And I
little
did. Yeah, and I did. I mean, this was yes, we're gonna have to cultivate. But what's nice is that I can still articulate this is the content, whether it's a video that you submit on your own, whether it's something you perform in a group, whether it's something that you do as a solo. It's flexible,
bit.
the content. I didn't have to rehash everything because I was able to still um, articulate the movement centered content, right?
Yeah,
Movement, dance, making centered content. Well, we are at our time. I know we just could talk forever, I think. Um,
probably.
but this has been such a treat, and I think that kind of to wrap up, what I'm hearing from you is that it sounds like LOD for you has been a repeated, I call it like a toe hold, right? Or a hook that like
Oh,
then,
you would call it that. You would call it that. You love those toe holds.
right, but that you're gonna climb, that then you can climb up, out of a situation. Like, again, okay, I'm at ground zero again. What do I do? What do I go to? And one of the things that I do on any given day, if I'm too frazzled, I'm like, let's just do a movement alphabet warm up, right? Like, there's never a scenario where I can't do a movement alphabet warm up with students and feel like it's connecting them, it's providing vocabulary, it's giving them a movement experience that is varied and personalized and all, it's like
And structured.
structured. Yeah. Like, I know what that entails. I know what those concepts are. And so it's very, very supportive. And it sounds like that's been a support for you. So you are the general manager of the LODC, so the USA Language of Dance Center organization, and you do a lot of the behind the scenes work with member benefits and things. And so I just wanted to give you a few moments to identify what are some of the benefits that you appreciate most about the Language of Dance Center, if you would.
Oh, sure, sure. I like to tell that joke. Back in the 80s, there was that guy who had that spray on hair, and he would have all those infomercials. And I think one of his shticks was like, "Oh, I liked it so much, I bought the company." And so I that's kind of my thing with LOD was I liked it so much, I stuck around so long, I joined the company. And so yeah, I am very, very honored to be the general manager and get to have a nice say in what products we develop and what tools we come up with for teachers, and helping develop things like our membership program. We're really proud of our membership program. The last couple of years, we've developed a lot of new fun, I think helpful tools for our members. All members get a 15% off discount, everything that we produce in our shop, which is obviously very important to a lot of people, because everything, when you're teaching and your tools and you're paying for them yourself, it adds up. So that's obviously a great benefit. But we've also been developing these little postcards that we send out throughout the year with just lesson activity ideas, or, hey, do you have this product and you're not quite sure how to use it? Here's some really great ways to use it. We've been doing those little postcard informal messages out to our members a few times a year, and then full on lesson plans at all different age levels, also a few times a year. And with each of those lesson plans, some of them have even been unit plans where you get a score or you get assessments, you get different things that you would need, different tools to just take it and read it and go apply it with your appropriate age population. And there's another master practitioner, Cody, who is really passionate about sort of redeveloping some of these lesson plans and the way that we produce these lesson plans for our members to become studio friendly. So kind of in a full circle moment, she and I have been talking a lot about, we grew up in that studio, that dance studio community setting. And how do we make LOD more accessible for the studio teachers so that they can have the same great benefits as the elementary, the middle school, the high school, the college professors using language of dance in their curriculum? So stay tuned for that. We're hopefully going to be developing some of that. Other really great benefits that we have is this: once you're a member, you have access to log into our website, and on the website are other resources, historic resources, LODA, Language of Dance Association newsletter archives from like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, different cute symbol of the months. Some are in poem form, poetry form, some are in just informational, if you're struggling with a certain movement concept family. So there's tons of resources available just to our members. And then I would say too, another really great benefit is our community. We are this very special community of supportive dance teachers who come from all different training backgrounds, cultures, and I think something that's been really beautifully developed over the last couple of years is really, really cultivating that and coming up with a way to support each other. So we're inviting into our membership postcards and our lesson plans that we're giving our members, our community, to help produce some of that material. Share some great ideas you have. And we're trying to even come up with some more community friendly events where we can all come together, even if it's over Zoom, and again, help support the work and help support each other and our kids supporting the work.
Love it. Oh, Rachel, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. And certainly I encourage everybody who's watching to check out the LODUSA.org website and see what's available there. And there are some upcoming courses in the summer. There's some 2 foundations courses. They cover the movement alphabet. So if you're interested in enrolling in that, there are some great opportunities, excellent teachers. You can go back and watch the first episode of this if you haven't already with Corazon Tierra. She is one of the primary teachers. And we really look forward to seeing you and talking with you again, Rachel. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Beth.
Bye.